Greetings, Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Thank you so much for your patience. Greetings, Anu. Peace and blessings to everyone in the chat. Brother Lo, Ipako Bahamas, Ima Akuya, thanks for holding it down until we got here. And we're back. You missed us?
Yes.
It's me. Did you miss us? We weren't here for a while. But we are back. Ima Precious and I'm Akot Deidre, and we will be doing and leading this evening's reading of Shema Anu for the Anu Way Foundation. So, first and foremost, always giving thanks and praise to Yah, the Creator, the Most High, for bringing us into this space and allowing us to get through this strong. For some of us, we have started Ramadan, and so we're fasting. So, there's a lot of reflection going on. So, we want to make sure that we are giving thanks that we have reached another end of the strong and are able to open our Shabbat with one another and fellowship with one another. So, with that being said, we would also like to make sure that we are thanking and giving big ups to Chief Yuya, the head of this movement, for allowing us this time and space in his movement to share with everyone. And willfully that you will get something out of this, that it will touch part of you if you have not read it. And if you have not read it, you will be compelled to go and download the book, which is free, I might add. And so, with that, I'm going to ask Ima Precious to bring us into the preface, which is a shortened, truncated list of why this work, the Anu Way Foundations, is so important. Ima Precious.
Yes. So let's see. The Anue Foundation's preface states that this book is not to be read only once. We are to read the words of this tome of knowledge and wisdom out loud, discuss the convictions of this work with your Anu brothers and sisters, share this information with your people. This publication should be read daily. Every line in this book can be taken out of context and studied on the strength of its own potential, and the truth is to be deliberated. Okay, thanks.
Give
And
thanks,
yeah,
Precious.
yes. Today we're going to jump right in and share a bit more of the paragraph in the Anu Way Foundation's family chapter. And so we're covering courtship and we're on the fifth paragraph. So we share exactly where we're starting off in the hopes that you all are following along or that you're at least marking the paragraph so that you can do your own deep dive. And as the preface says, share it with your people, okay, and discuss it among your sisters and brothers. But this time we're going to do things slightly different. I want to pose this question to everyone first. We're going to open with the question before we even start to read. So the question is, what are some of the ways a woman can preserve her fertility? And we are opening that question up because it's not a trick question and it isn't a question exclusive to women per se. And you'll see why. So just brothers or babas, consider how you may have a responsibility in the preservation of a woman's fertility or your daughter's fertility. Okay. So I'm going to jump right in and read the paragraph. To preserve the fertility of the woman, dating must be avoided. A woman, no matter the age, should be poured into by her father and then her master or mate. If she is mentally, emotionally, physically, or spiritually entered by too many men, she loses her facility to receive. A woman's reception is one of her paramount offerings. Without it, she is of no use to a man or family. If a potential suitor is not looking for courtship, he is only looking to play in the soil or use it for his private enrichment. It is the father's responsibility to safeguard her receptors until a suitable mate is acquired. Sister Deidre?
Give thanks. So, as has been our usual path, we're going to take this line by line as Ima Precious read in the preface. So what I will ask so that we can put it in the chat for Ima Precious to give us the question again, and then we'll start breaking down each line.
What are some of the ways you can preserve a woman's fertility?
Okay. I'm going to also put that in the chat. Okay, so the question is in the chat, and you can start to give your answers. So let's start with the first line. To preserve the fertility of the woman, dating must be avoided. So this takes us back to when we first started the section on courtship, and we talked about why dating is a problem. And that is because when we date, we allow for multiple spirits to impregnate us, both consciously and unconsciously. Women are vessels to receive, and after a while, you may be too full to receive someone who could be your righteous mate, or and that be because you're full of maybe people who are unrighteous, and so then if you're too full, what are you leaving room to accept? Most secular ideas of dating do include sex. So that's another piece that will, start to diminish your fertility and your purity because you're allowing too many people inside, right? And that should be where your righteous mate is allowed to go. Um, and all of the having sex outside of marriage. So when we think about dating, this is why we don't date, because in the secular world, dating includes sex. So if you're being poured into spiritually and physically by too many people or people prior to your righteous mate, what are you leaving for your mate to infill into you so that you can then pour into the family?
Yeah.
Impression?
Yeah, secular comes to mind when you touched on that. Secular ideas about what entering into a union looks like, and the avoidance of dating being really what the focal point needs to be, right? It makes me think of the idea of cross-cultural unions and why it's important to avoid having cross-cultural unions. I wanted to share really quickly something from just a quote from the Solutions for Dysfunctional Family Relationships. And it says, culture is a living, breathing organism that fights for survival and dominance. Actually, let me slide this over a little bit. That fights for survival and dominance within the psyche of an individual and community, right? So when you think about culture, you don't, I never thought of it as a living, breathing organism. But when you do and you acknowledge that it's fighting to survive, then you can begin to imagine, and it goes on to say, therefore, two cultures will fight for dominance if placed in the same space. So if you can understand and appreciate that dating isn't the way to creating family, but you still continue to open yourself up in that fashion, you're aligning with you're pretty much opening things up to having this conflict. And we're going to delve into some of the nuances of what can come out of that conflict.
Right.
So I'll go into the next line. A woman, no matter the age, should be poured into by her father and then her master or mate. Um, being poured into, uh, and the idea of what that looks like. We think about. I know I think about the full cup, and but then it always begs the question: what's in the cup? Who's filling it, and what are they filling it with? So with that, recognizing that the original infilling should be coming from the Father, and then from your divine mate is really the key here. Yeah.
Yeah. And when I think of this, the reason why it's important, there's a hierarchy here, and then there's a structure and not a schedule, but maybe structure is the word. Father then mate. Notice there's no room for anyone else, you know? And so this goes back to the reason why we don't date, like, because this does protect your fertility. Because when we come into this world as women, as young girls, as little girls, babies, and then we come into womanhood, the only masculine energy that should be poured into to us is that of which that made us. I would say, I think that's the right one. It made us. Um, that union of mother and father, right? And so until such time where you are married, that's the only energy, the only spirit that should be poured into you. The only knowledge you should receive, it should only come from the Father. And then when you do get married and mated, that even is, directed by the Father, or by the families together, really by the Father. Because the Father has that insight and that intellect to see, like, who is the righteous mate for my daughter, and also who am I bringing in to my family, or what family is she going into. So, it's really important that that structure be held to. We have to acknowledge that that doesn't happen all the time over here. So then what is the result of that? A lot of the times we have broken homes, divorce, single parenthood, single mothers, and those are all recipes for, or they're examples of dysfunctional families, and just in many instances recipes for disaster. So there's a reason why, no matter the age, a woman should be poured into by her father. So I'll move into the next sentence. If she is mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually entered by too many men, she loses her facility to receive. So I'll say that again. If she is mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually entered by too many men, she loses her facility to receive. So this goes back to the very first sentence of this section. When you are being poured into by too many men, it's almost the same as being like that information whore. That's a lot of knowledge and a lot of spirit going into one vessel. And there's a lot of knowledge coming from different places. So you don't know if it's righteous, unrighteous, if it's too much, if it's too little. You're not really sure of where it's going. We may think we are, but the truth is we're not. We're not really sure. And then what happens when we have all that inside? Confusion sets in. So I have a little story, like, to give an example of why, we have to be mindful of moving the way the secular does, and allowing too many men and too much to pour into one person and not waiting. And it really goes into not being able to receive. So many, many moons ago, I was in the gym, and I was in this space in my head where it's like, yeah, I'm going to the gym. I taught myself how to run on the treadmill. Like, it's awesome. So this one night, after, I think it was after school, I went into the gym and I was like headed towards the treadmills. And it's to note, like, I never headed toward this row of treadmills because I just didn't like the way they looked. And I preferred the row behind them. So, and this also was prime time. I think it was a Friday night or whatever. So it was prime time. So, all the machines are taken before people like get ready to do whatever they're going to do on a Friday night. So and I was out at night by myself. So we already know I was, not righteous. I was just not in the place where I needed to be. So as I'm approaching the treadmills, I see a man and a woman. The woman is, we'll just call her Jenna, and the man, we'll call him Eric. They're talking to one another. Jenna's on this treadmill, and Eric is talking to her on the treadmill opposite, on the other side of her. So if, from my direction, there's Jenna and then Eric. So the only free treadmill was on the other side of Jenna. So I step on the treadmill, and I'm wondering why I'm running all of a sudden. I am literally running for my life. And as I'm running, and this is all happening in a split second, I realized the treadmill was on. And I was just running, trying to catch up and keep up. because something was already going and I wasn't paying attention, and I was just on autopilot doing what I thought, I was supposed to be doing and what everybody does. I'm just going to step on this treadmill. And now I'm like this, and I couldn't keep up. So what happens? I get thrown off the treadmill. I hit the next row treadmill. My head hits something. I'm sure there was like a minor brain injury. Who knows? And the next thing I know, it's silence and blackness. And when I came to, and I'm sure this all happened in like a split second, all you hear, it kind of sounds like people talking to you through water. It's like, oh, and like really like slow motion. And when I say stars, you really do see stars when you fall like that. And it's not like the five pointed stars that, they show you in cartoons. It's like these little, like, twinkly things when your vision comes back, and they're everywhere. And now I have Jenna and Eric and about three trainers and a bystander standing over me, and everybody's mouth is open, like wondering if I'm okay. And I'm just like unable to receive anything because my head is still spinning and ringing, and I'm probably got like a third-degree burn from the rubber when I hit the like my literally it was like boom boom, like it was like I fell one way and then the rubber just threw me back to the other side. So my point for that story is like when we're just on autopilot and we're just running and we're just not looking, the world, when we're not moving in the space we're supposed to be moving because we're doing something else, it will spit you out. It will knock you down and spit you out and show you, and then you have to realize that's the creator. That's y'all telling you, yeah, that's not what you were supposed to be doing. This was not what was meant for you. And so I was unable to receive anything once that happened. Now I'm unable to receive any sort of help because I can barely like hear anybody. I can barely hear. I'm glad you like it. I can barely hear anybody talking to me. It literally was like, are you okay? And I'm just like kind of dazed and confused and staring at anybody. And I don't even think I was even able to work out after that because it was like, you have a head injury. And I'm sure the gym is just like, please don't sue. But again, my point is like, when you're doing something, and you're not paying attention, you're just doing what everybody else is doing, you will definitely, get knocked down and thrown away. And then again, like I said, I wasn't even able to receive help because I can't hear anybody. I can barely see. My vision's blurry now, you know? Who knows? That might be why I still wear glasses. Who knows? But so that's the point. That reception, I'm unable. Like my receptors are just damaged. I was unable in that moment to receive any sort of help, anything that would kind of put me in a better space. And I had until it was time to like calm down. I literally had to empty out so that I could receive anything going forward. So, when there's too much going on, too much that we're receiving because we're doing everything else that we're not supposed to be doing, you lose your ability to receive. Anything you wanted to add, Emma Precious?
I don't think
I'm glad there's a lot of laughter.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't even have, I'm not able to follow that. I mean, I had a few notes, but it's not even worth it for me to try to like do anything behind that. So I'm gonna forego, I'm gonna ball them up and throw them across the room. What I did like though, and I just wanted to touch on something that you said, you spoke to the idea of being an autopilot, right? And I know Chief said, he's not sure where the story is going, but it's funny. So, I see the connection, right? There is the idea of the mental, emotional, physical, spiritual, too many entries, right? Just doing too much, just TOO. And we all can relate to that. The one thing that did come to mind for me is the idea of spiritual promiscuity. Sometimes when we enter into the thought that we want to be conscious or woke or sister so and so or mama this or baba that, you begin to just pull from anywhere and everywhere that just seems not Christian, right?
Mhm.
And that can, the same way, like you just hop on that proverbial treadmill, if you will, and you don't even know where the heck you're going or how fast it's spinning until what happened? You bust your head like good old Sister Deidre over here.
Busted.
Bust your head.
I buzzed my head. I was doing
So
as it
pretty much,
was.
Yes. So pretty much, I guess, like what I just jotted down was like that autopilot is really what happens when you're living life out of alignment. You need to
Mhm.
be intentional about where you're headed and that you're actually connected to that divinity, and that that's what's guiding your walk. And as women, yes, we have our connection to Yah, but also we're expected to have a connection to our master as well. So
Yeah.
yeah. So thank you for that. Woohoo. Um, a woman's reception is one of her paramount offerings. So for me, this really just spoke to the idea of something you touched on, right? The ability to receive. And so that reception or receptivity took me to the idea of water, and what happens with water, how easily water can be polluted, how simply you become what is put in you, on you, around you, right? Because there's environmental pollutants that's just in the air that winds up in the water, and we as women are water.
Mm-hmm.
So a woman's reception is one of her, paramount offerings. Once we start, I think of, being a New York kid, a Brooklyn kid in the 80s, 90s. It was kind of like once the water is polluted, it's kind of no turning back. Like you can't filter the Hudson. Mm-mm. Like I don't anyone who's even driven into New York, that water can't be filtered, you know? And so I want to challenge the women and the brothers on this call who have daughters or who imagine one day having daughters. What level of protection, what responsibility do you really have to ensure that you are that covering that keeps that water protected? That's really, yeah. I had some other things, just I guess I'll offer it as a reference point. Dig into uh Proverbs, the Proverbs 31, 31, 10, and 11. So
Yeah.
I'm not going to read it, but it's really the wife of noble character. And what I saw there was the personification of a woman who is receptive and what she brings to her mate. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, like when I think of it's one of our paramount offerings. Yeah, just to echo, because we are water, and water is receptive. Like when we think about how, like, this may be morbid, but when don't drop a radio, don't have anything plugged in while you're in the bathtub. Why?
Right.
Because that electricity, right? So like, but if you needed to jumpstart something, you want to make sure that that water is there. I mean, I don't know, I'm not an engineer, maybe it'll short it out, but let's just say for conversation's sake that it will jumpstart something. So like, if you have no water, then what do you have? What do you have? So
Yeah.
so to follow up with that, without it, and we're talking about reception, without it, she is of no use to a man. So it takes me back to when I was talking about that muffled sound. Nothing is coming in, So if we take the idea of being poured into and entered into, and I think we all know, for the adults in the room, what entered into means in both physically, spiritually, mentally, emotionally. If you're entered into too much, it's like having that muffled sound. Nothing is getting through. So there's no comprehension because you have to pour out first. And in a lot of cases, you'll find a lot of women who are either unable or unwilling to pour out. So, but then but I want a man. If let's be clear, women need men, men desire women. So if you are unable to outpour what is bad to be ready to fill in by the man that you want, then you are of no use.
Right.
Anything you want to add?
The idea of a clean vessel, right? I think it aligns with the last thing you said. You need to be able to, one, be empty enough, right? So empty enough, open and clear enough, to receive from the righteous person, not just from anyone, which is why, again, we're not it's not about dating, but to just be able to receive and be a vessel in order to reflect back out all that you are getting back into the world to your
Yeah.
youth and to your sisters, and to really represent the crown,
Yeah.
right? So
Hmm.
yeah.
And
Mhm.
just to like even to give more like insight, like when I read this, it reminded me of one of the Shabbat's presentations that we had. It was given by Brother Rahman, where he was talking about soil, and he talked about pH balance. And pH balance is like the potential to hold water. So if you are, if you're coming and you're unbalanced, you're not really right, that potential to hold water is not there. And this is when we're having a conversation about soil. So like it's really important that soil, so women are also earth, right? But if that earth is hard like clay, then nothing can grow there. And yes, there's something we learned called cover cropping, but that takes time and effort. So if we're already moving a certain way, we have to think, will someone want to spend time and effort to cover crop you and get you right? And fix that pH balance, and check the levels to make sure that they can cover crop and then start to implant to grow what needs to grow. If not, then nothing. So it's the same thing. Without that receptivity, then we are nothing without it. We need it. We're of no use to a man without it.
Yeah, give thanks. If a potential suitor is not looking for courtship, he is only looking to play in the soil or use it for his private enrichment. So, I, I don't really think that this line needs much interpretation or much, digging through. But we're still going. I still have something, and it's simply that the moral is of the story is do not date. Do not date. Because who wants to be played with? Or should I say, unless you're volunteering to be played with and for things to just, and to be littered, right? Because if you really think of it, we're earth, we women are earth and water. We're not fire, we're not air, right? Those two elements are, I mean, yes, there is air pollution, but litter is everywhere. And it's usually between the water and the earth. And when you think about it, those are the two most challenging things to clean up once a mess is made. And so I think we have to really think about that. Um, and if you're not being courted, then you it begs the question, what are you actually doing? What are you participating in? What standards? I know both Sister Deidre and I, as well as the brothers who do these discussions, the Shema Nu talks on Yom Shishi, have spoken to the folly of dating in the past and how it really doesn't lend itself to building family. Um, so again, if a potential suitor is not looking for courtship, he is only looking to play in the soil or use it for his private enrichment. So that means that the nutrients that Sister Deidre spoke about, those nutrients that you should have if you have the proper covering, and many of us unfortunately don't have that father figure. So it's even more important to be diligent for those that have daughters to make sure, or who don't have children, to make sure that you enter into things correctly. Um, but that enrichment, right, when you think of rich soil, like it's enriched and it's fortified with minerals that help um, plants grow. And I am far
Mhm.
from like a gardener, but I know that there's a certain level that's needed there. Um, so why allow someone to come and play in your soil to rob it of its nutrients, only to then bring some dry, dense soil? What did you call it? Hard clay?
Mhm.
And then want somebody to then have to bring it back to life.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, that's
Yeah.
what I got. Yeah.
I had a whole like thought about like the soil, but we just talked about that. But as you were speaking, it made me think like, what would I rather be? What would you rather be? that nice silver basin that maybe, has some sweet water in it, or even like totally empty, or the garbage can on the corner of, I don't know, Broadway and who knows where,
Let's
that's
say
got
once you see
seagulls.
Atlantic. Once
Right, right. It's got seagulls flying all over, pigeons. No, the pigeons.
that would be pigeons, yeah,
Pigeons.
in Harlem.
Pigeons
Yeah.
all over it that you're even scared to cross. So, I think I'd rather be the silver basin instead of the pigeon pickings. So, just saying.
Nobody wants to be pigeon pickings. I like
Nobody wants
you
to be
come
pigeon
up with
pickings.
some real good. You always make up some dang pigeon pickings.
When was the last time?
I don't recall. Surely.
I have to rewatch pigeon
But I'm
write
gonna
them
write
down.
pigeon pickings down because
These are
yeah.
isms. Nobody wants to be pigeon pickings. But
Mm-mm.
sadly, there's a lot of pigeon pickings.
Or perhaps,
So,
perhaps not.
so to round this out, it is the father's responsibility to safeguard her receptors until a suitable mate is acquired. And when I read this really made me think about my own experience growing up. I do come from a dysfunctional household, just from the simple fact that several, like my parents were not necessarily the same culture. Yes, they're both melanated, but the culture was very different. And then there's also divorce. So that just like, that's the nail in the coffin. And, it's important when you have a split camp like that, it is important that one message is there. But it's really hard. It's very difficult when you have a split camp. And let me be very clear. When I say split camp, I'm speaking of not necessarily the parents or the father not being in the home, because we know that there are plural situations where the father may not physically be there. But best believe the message and the infilling is coming from the father. And that message is being poured into the women and down through the children. So let's not confuse or conflate and make any mistakes. I'm specifically speaking about divorce, where you now have a split camp and there are two different cultures or ideals being poured into children, because that's where the confusion sets in. And so my point for saying that it is important that having one message and understanding in the home, because that righteous pouring is what is the ability to safeguard the receptors. So that frequency that a father has with their children, and specifically the girl children, as we're talking about protecting and preserving fertility, so that frequency isn't interrupted by anything outside of the home, secular included.
Right. So frequency. Um, when I think of frequency or even receptors, right? Somehow my brain, I don't know, when you were sharing, it took me to the old school rabbit ears antenna.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Even when that television worked, it still sometimes had waves. You had to adjust the antenna. They could have been retractable. And so it's like you had to find the right positioning for a particular channel in order to get the best reception. Um, that is dating. Take those antennas, you got two kids, and then they start, one breaks off, and then they're like ninja swords after a while. So then what are you using? You're using aluminum foil. I know that's what we use. We use aluminum foil. And so the reception is even worse. And eventually it's degraded. Like the quality of the show that you're able to even see on that television is compromised greatly. Now, for those of us, I think maybe over 20. So, well, yeah, because digital only came in really recently. So it's like we can all picture that. And if you view dating as that, and even perhaps the woman as that television, just the image or the ability to receive clearly, and to reflect clarity, is lost over time, then consider like courting being that digital connection where it's just one singular tight locked connection, and it's very clear and crisp, and you're just not compromised. You're sure that you're consistently receiving the same messaging, and you're able to reflect that back to the world, in that same fashion. So
Mm-hmm.
that was my weird analogy about rabbit ear antenna and
That
pigeon
weird.
chickens and everything else, right?
It wasn't weird. I think Brother Antonio agrees to slap it on the side. I remember those two. I'm gonna be
Oh,
honest.
slap
I
it
still
aside.
hit things when it doesn't work.
But it
But
doesn't work.
again, how often are we gonna continue to do that? You know, where you until you have to fall in line and get what works. And so it's the same. It's the same when it comes to protecting fertility. We have to start from the beginning, do what works, because then we find ourselves 30, 40, 50 in this very reactive mode where we have to try to undo, which is impossible. You can't undo what's been done, but you have to now correct course. So
Yeah,
that
indeed.
is I think like the basis of this evening's share in protecting fertility and why it is important and why reception is important as well. It's that reception first to the father and then to the mate, master or mate slash mate slash mate. So with that, we didn't necessarily have many questions and the question answered in the chat, but I'm going to go back and see. And we did have some of our new brothers and sisters join us. So shalom, Sister
Mhm.
Kashia, Achot Kashia, shalom, Achot Munira, peace and greetings, Anen Samu Aunk. L. Williams, greetings. Cree and Nicole, greetings. Brother Antonio and Brother Christopher, greetings. Brother Lowe. And then we got some answers. The Herbalist King, I think. Um, peace to you, peace, Ima Sequoia and Sister Maxine. So when it comes to our question, Brother Antonio says, ensure that she is covered at all times in order to preserve her fertility. I'm sorry, ensure that she is covered at all times. In order to preserve her fertility, she must be taught about the danger slash power of her receptivity and ability to multiply what she receives, good or bad. That is an excellent point because that is exactly what water does. Just like when you think about like the sound, while like for in my case, while the sound was muffled, it definitely was amplified. I just didn't know what was being said. But yes, good or bad. And also, Chief says, ensuring you are keeping her stimulated with knowledge will maintain a fine mist over her surface, facilitating fertility. You needn't rain down wisdom, but surround her in it like a forest vapor. I love it. I love it.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, yes,
Wow.
and then there's quite a few comments of me being unconscious from my treadmill accident. So, if you are in the chat, feel free to go up. And I think that's what we have. So, if you did not get a chance to answer the question for this Shema, please feel free to put it in the comments. And as always, we do look at the comments and we will respond as we are able to. But we definitely look at the comments and respond. Some of you who are in the chat have definitely you know, received responses. And, sometimes it doesn't necessarily require like a long, drawn out answer, but we absolutely will acknowledge your response. So if you didn't get a chance to put it in this evening in the live chat and you're watching this maybe tomorrow or the day after, or maybe a year from now, please feel free to put it in the chat and whoever's manning the channel a year from now will get back to you. But give thanks for joining us and opening up our Shabbat. It is now 7:50, and I know some of you are preparing to break fast, so we will
Ready.
not hold you any longer.
Yes.
Once again, give thanks for Chief Yuya for allowing this space for us. Precious, do you have anything else?
No, give thanks. Peace.
Okay, give thanks, everyone. Peace. Thank you for joining us. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Peace.